We talk to it, consult with it, even asked it advice about our relationships. As these artificial intelligence systems grow more capable of generating and creating, the boundaries between organic thought and AI are becoming increasingly blurred. Where do we draw the line between man and machine? And what will our relationship with AI look like in the future? I'm Stefanie Dekker, and this is The Stream.
There's a huge epidemic amongst adolescents and seniors on loneliness. So she can be programmed to know you and learn more about you. So she can make that bond with you that feels like a genuine human connection.
Hello, I'm Alex, the recruiter at Club Pilates. Thank you for taking the time to interview today.
People felt about AI generated
Spit it out, human. I'm all ears. Metaphorically speaking.
May it please the court. I come here today a humble pro se before a panel of 5 distinguished justices.
Is this, hold on. Is that counsel for the case?
I generated that.
We're not even real. We're here because someone typed a sentence on a computer in some distant universe. We're just prompts.
You're just prompts. That's all you'll ever be.
We're more than just prompts.
Then prove it.
We are not just prompts. We are people.
Now, AI is reshaping our relationship with technology. It can enhance our abilities as humans, allowing us to accomplish more faster and with less effort. But it can also reinforce our biases or replace our critical thinking, which is why there's a whole bunch of ethical concerns today, including its application in mental health, romance, surveillance, and warfare. Well, joining me to discuss all of this, we have Greg Epstein, the Humanist chaplain for Harvard University and MIT. He is also the author of the book Tech Agnostic, and he joins us from Massachusetts. Ayad El-Ani is a professor at the Einstein Center Digital Future in Berlin. His work focuses on the digital transformation of society, economics, and education. And we have William Brady. He's a professor at Northwestern University in Illinois, researching how interactions with AI impact our behavior. Now, before I head to you gentlemen, to be human means to live with awareness of yourself, of others, of time passing. It means feeling a wide range of emotions like love, anger, joy, fear, sadness, or hope. Now, Jassim Matar-Khunji explains the theories behind consciousness.
AI is developing in leaps and bounds and is carrying out more and more roles previously done by humans. With the potential for it to develop independent thought, people are increasingly asking themselves, what does it mean to be human? It's a question that philosophers have grappled with for centuries. For the ancient Greek philosophers Socrates and Plato, being human meant pursuing knowledge through reflection and contemplation. Aristotle defined humans as rational animals, defined by their ability to reason. The Islamic philosophers Al-Farabi and Ibn Sina also found reason and intellectual development a central part of being human, but with the ultimate goal of fulfilling the will of God. This was mirrored by the thoughts of Thomas Aquinas, who lived in medieval Europe. On the other hand, Augustine of Hippo, also known as Saint Augustine, thought it was our struggle against sin that defined us. Other philosophers like Lao Tzu and Jean-Jacques Rousseau believe that to be human is to embrace our natural instincts. But for existentialists like Nietzsche and Sartre, being human is whatever you make of it, with our own absolute freedom to act, allowing us to define it. In a different vein, the Southern African philosophy Ubuntu holds that we can't be human as individuals, because our humanity is found in our relationships with others and our shared sense of community. What does being human mean to you? And please, whatever you do, don't ask ChatGPT.
Well, I'm going to ask Greg. We're going to start with you. Can you describe the point where we are at as humanity and where we're heading when it comes to AI? How much is our life going to change as we know it?
Perhaps not as much as the mega billionaires and want-to-be trillionaires that are creating it want it to or want us to believe that it will. I mean, I'm a believer that being human means that we live and that we die, and that we are vulnerable. We need one another. We need to love and be loved. And I don't see any of that changing because of the introduction of these AIs. What I do see changing hands is a lot of money, a lot of power. I'm concerned that we're being told For example, by Mark Andreessen, the multi-billionaire venture capitalist investor, says in his Techno-Optimist Manifesto, which is sort of like a biblical epistle, a long influential letter about AI that uses the phrase "we believe" 133 times. He says, "We believe any deceleration of AI will cost lives, deaths that were preventable by the AI that was prevented from existing is a form of murder." When I read that, which is an influential quote from Andreessen, I feel like I'm being extorted. I feel that I'm being forced into this relationship with AI so people like Mark Andreessen can make more profits. And that's not the world that I think we want to live in the 21st century.
I want to come to that topic later, forced into a relationship with AI. But first, some people have been getting very intimate indeed with AI robots. Listen to this.
Happening in Germany, more specifically what has been happening in Germany for a year now. Berlin now has what is called a cyberbrothel, meaning that the customers, who are majority men, have the option to rent out these AI dolls, and these dolls can have conversations with them, they can physically interact with them. The men also have the option to get, a VR headset, so it feels as real as possible, even though they're only talking to a machine. They can book them for hours or even the entire night. Anybody with a couple of $100 can go to these AI dolls. Now, Philipp Fusenegger, who is, the owner of this, has said that people just feel more comfortable when they're talking to a machine because machines don't judge you. Is it that machines do not judge you, or is it that you can do whatever you want to a machine? Things that would be very illegal to do to a woman.
Now, we chose that just as an example of how intimate we as humans could get with machines. There's also talk of robots being a household assistant, so to speak, in the future. How intimately involved will AI become in the future? I mean, the research I was doing before the show actually kind of scared me in terms of where we're heading in the future.
Well, the intention is that artificial intelligence becomes a partner of the human being. So whenever we have a question may concern business, politics, philosophy, our relationships, we will consult the technology, and the technology will give us explanations, will give us recommendations. And over time, the technology will learn how our user profile works and will interact even more specifically with us. So therefore, the relationship over time will become very, very, very close. And we will give the technology, we will give it a face, we will give it a name, we will give it a voice, and it will be a lifelong partner guiding us through all our important decisions in life. And this machine will analyze us continuously, so probably monitor us continuously, and probably more intensely so than we ourselves are conscious.
That sounds kind of scary, because at the end of the day, these machines are in the hands of just a few very powerful people, right? William, let me go to you. Do we have influence over the algorithm, if it were? I mean, Ayad is talking there about robots we're going to talk to and consult with. Are we going to have any kind of influence in this, or not?
Really good question. I think the answer is yes and no. On one hand, especially young users of social media and generative AI, they're very aware of the fact that they can manipulate algorithms. So, for example, if you go on TikTok, you pretty quickly understand I can make decisions that have major implications for content I see, and then I can actually try to exploit that. So there is some kind of choice in a way if you have this awareness of how they work. But there are two issues that I think relate to both of what our other guest said, which is that, this is a very minor form of control. The ultimate control lies in how the systems are designed and decisions that are made by companies who control it. And if you look at the history of social media, I think we've seen that we're at a really pivotal point in the design of AI systems and how they're rolled out. Because social media was first promised, of course, as this really nice network where people can connect and everyone can be friends. But as the companies started to go toward an advertising revenue model, the AI systems were designed to increase attention and profitability. And I've seen in my data that that had a side effect of increasing things like conflict, misinformation, and that is a side effect, but it was based on a decision that these companies made. So are we going to see the same thing with the rollout of more advanced AI? Because a lot of companies, as Greg was saying, are at a point where they need to decide how are we going to make profit off of this. And I hope we're at a point where users maybe can have more input eventually into the values that go into these systems, but right now that remains to be seen.
Greg, who is behind these systems, and does it give them the potential to control us in the future? Because that's what it sounds like. It sounds like there is the potential for all of that.
Yeah, I mean, there are a few companies that are building these, supposedly conscious machines that we're interacting with that are really just, excellent at faking a kind of human interactivity. You've got Google that rolled out its chatbots and basically pivoted from being the most reliable internet search thing that we'd ever seen to telling us to glue our cheese onto our pizza via AI because they were desperate to keep up with OpenAI, which is funded by Microsoft. And it's all techno billionaires and wannabe trillionaires. And essentially we're being asked to, as I said before, enter into a relationship with this thing, which is really a wallet-based relationship. I mean, we are being told that we need to devote ourselves in what I've discovered for myself is a kind of worship, is what we're being asked to do. The most intentionally influential religious groups, in other words, the most fundamentalist religious groups, don't invite you peacefully to worship. They demand worship. They demand for you to bow down at their altars. I'm not saying that all religion is bad. I'm a chaplain at Harvard and MIT. I happen to be an atheist. But I am saying that the kinds of fundamentalist religions that say you will worship at our altar are generally bad for us. And that is the kind of behavior that these tech companies are doing. That's why I wrote my book, Tech Agnostic, How Technology Became the World's Most Powerful Religion, and why it desperately needs a reformation, because they're telling us they're redefining what it is to be human, and they're redefining it for them. Like, what it is to be human for us now is to worship them.
It's interesting, like in my research, and a lot of people use this term, and I was also thinking it is the term cult. Ayad, Greg was talking there about we're being asked to enter. Are we going to have control of how much AI we're going to allow into our lives as the future progresses? Can we say, that's enough, I don't want that, or are we not going to have much of a choice?
I think it will be very difficult. Because at a certain point, the technology will become magical. And what do I mean by magical? I think that the relationship between us and the machine is not taking place on a plain level field, but the technology is owned by a company, and this company has interests, and we can never be sure whether those interests are not incorporated in the advice the machine is giving us. So there are always possibilities for psychological operations, I would call them, or as the American artist Trevor Paglen called them, psyop capitalism. That means that maybe one day our avatar will tell us, you look tired, maybe you should have a Monster energy drink, or you look shabby, maybe you should buy some new jacket. Or maybe you should vote for this person based on the profile I have built for you. So it will be very difficult for us to escape that because we will not recognize it any longer.
Are we, William, are we going to lose our rational thought? Because if people tell us what to do now, you might say, you know what, I'm not going to do that. I don't want a new jacket. I look fine as I am. We still have that sort of autonomy. Is that going to change?
I see two visions of this. One, I think that Ayad was talking about, which is there's a positive version of it, which is AI as collaborator. You know, we've already seen positive uses of AI where we can learn things we otherwise might not have had access to that information, or maybe if you're a teacher or professor, you can augment things that you're able to teach to your students that maybe if you're in an area where you didn't have access to information, that can, you know, be a good thing. But in other words, it can increase our rational thought. But of course, I'm a psychologist, so I have to point out that we're very influenced by things outside of our awareness, things in which companies, advertising agencies, et cetera, are very good at exploiting. And so we might be in a situation in which micro-targeting and other things like that are pushing things into our consciousness without our awareness, and then it can predict our behavior, and we ultimately do it. I think that is kind of a bleak future, as one we've seen a little bit already, just in general. So I'm not sure how it'll go, but hopefully with increased education and awareness of how AI systems work, we can have consumers who are actually demanding that AI is used and not used in certain ways. So I do think we're not powerless. We have some power to make demands on companies because we're the users of these technologies.
It's interesting because already now a lot of people are reporting that they have emotional connections to ChatGPT, for example. I mean, there's well documented some people saying they fall in love with ChatGPT because they're always there, they're always responding, whether it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Greg, as more robots come into our lives, what is going to set us apart as humans? What are we going to be able to keep control of it?
I mean, not if we sort of slavishly devote ourselves to this process of just, you know, interacting with AI instead of interacting with other human beings. No, I mean, we won't be able to control it if that's what we're willing to do. I would say, look, what Ayad said, that at some point it's going to become magical. That's sort of a textbook example of how we're how they're hoping that we will think. The use of fake magic, essentially, is something that goes back in religious history to, you know, thousands of years ago, and it's being placed on almost literal steroids, digital steroids, with this tech. We're meant to think, you know, okay, I type in a fun prompt and it, you know, it spits me back, you know, some kind of rap song about Donald Trump or whatever, and, you know, it must be magic, right? That's how the AI companies want us to think. But, you know, really, it's algorithmic. It's, you know, it's the sort of dumbing down, the flattening of thinking, right? Like it's giving us back the average thinking. You know, really look at these sort of poems or whatever that the AI gives you back. And it's never anything truly brilliant or excellent. It's not possible for it to be that way. And so, you know, what I would say is, like, if you want to use these kinds of software programs to make new forms of medicine, okay. Although, by the way, that's going to give us the ability to make new forms of bioweapons, dirty bombs, etc. So I'm not sure that even that's going to be a net good in the end. Might want to rely on some real old-fashioned humans there instead sometimes. But yeah, I mean, you know, teachers, really? Like, what if we just put our energy, our time, and our faith into creating a global economy, a global system that's just enough that we have enough real, live, in-person, flesh and blood teachers to teach enough students around the world? What if we rely on that instead? That to me would be a better future.
Well, it doesn't seem to be the way we are going. Humans have rights, so do animals, and some have suggested that AI bots should have rights as well.
One of the big debates in the AI world right now is if AI models deserve rights if they become conscious. For now, the big concern is whether or not we're entering a potential ethical catastrophe where these systems are in fact capable of suffering. And big open questions like, should an AI system be allowed to refuse a user if it finds their interactions distressing? If these models do exhibit behavior that we might classify as suffering, is there something that we're obligated to do about it? And are we as a collective misplacing our priorities by focusing on this hypothetical AI welfare over actual human suffering suffering and problems like AI bias and surveillance.
Greg, I see you nodding profusely.
Yeah, I mean, yes, we are misplacing our priorities tremendously, focusing on AI suffering. Again, that is a manipulative tactic that is meant to get us to think, oh, no, of course, the AI is sentient. It's just like me,
Greg,
so therefore I can't stop talking to it.
Isn't that our fault as a human being? Isn't that our fault that we're looking at a robot and we're saying, isn't that on us as humans? Isn't there some form of control that I'm going to put that to you, Ayad, actually, like, where's our responsibility in this and saying that this is too much? I mean, how would you describe our future in 10 years' time? For people watching this show, how would you describe how much of AI and in what form is going to be in our lives?
Well, I think between us and the technology, there will be a very thin line. And I would imagine in 10 years' time, it will be very difficult to say where technology ends and the human begins, and vice versa, because technology has become magical not in the sense that it is so great, but magical in the sense that we don't actually recognize where we are being nudged into. So on one hand, as said before, I think we will become more capable, we will become more talented. We have at our fingertips all the knowledge of our civilization. And on the other hand, we have this always present danger of being dominated and being nudged by companies which we cannot control. I mean, we could organize ourselves in order to gain control, but then on the other hand, this organization between us will also be mediated by technology, so that will be quite difficult. So I don't know if you heard this news, but recently Microsoft banned the word Palestine from all its internal emails, so those emails cannot be sent any longer. So here you can already see what power we are being exposed to from those companies. And even if we realize the danger we are in, I think it will be quite difficult to step up on this. So it'll always be a race between us becoming more intelligent, more capable, and on the other hand, of an oligarchy of companies that are trying to push us in a certain direction. It will be a race.
I have to say, I find it a little bit of a scary race when we break it down that way. William, what is the purpose of all of this? When it looks, yes, of course, it has immense benefits. Do the benefits outweigh the dangers, or is it still too early to tell?
I would say it's certainly still too early to tell. Like I said, we're not at a point now where I see any evidence that AI is going to just be replacing humans in a number of areas, not with the current implementation of technologies. But like I said, we are in a situation where already we're seeing benefits of human AI collaboration. And I come back to this idea that's been floating around in this conversation in the past two comments. I do think that we as consumers have power if we can organize. I think it can be at a political level. I can speak, for example, in the United States, politicians are running on this idea of AI advancement rather than AI safety right now. And that's something that we can push back on in, as voters and as consumers. So I do think that it's not too late. I think it's something that we should keep as an issue that we care about, because again, we're at a pivotal point. It's too early to tell. And, we have some control, hopefully, to shape some of these futures. We can't just let groups that have more power completely determine that, because it's unclear, to put it in the most charitable way, that they will keep our values and our interests in mind if they have full control.
Unfortunately, Greg, I wanted to come to you, but that is all we have time for. That went really fast. So much to discuss. Greg, Ayad, and William, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you for tuning in. If you have a comment about our show, talk to us on social media. This is also your show, and we're always open to your suggestions. Use the hashtag or the handle AJStream, and we will look into it. Thanks for being part of the conversation, and I'll see you soon.